Okay. On 7.
Okay, well, we'll do it on 7.
6, 7.
Perfect. I
Ah,
think it was
you're
on. I think we did it.
no, no, I don't think we did.
Really? I thought it was right on. We should always count as a 7.
Okay. 1,
2.
2, 7.
Oh no. All
I
right.
said 1, 2, 7. Come on, how hard is this?
Okay, never mind. We got it the first time. I'm gonna
Are you
use.
sure?
Yeah, we got it the first time. It was great. So, hey everybody, and welcome back to Swords, Shields, etc. I'm your host Arthur, and with me is my co-host Justin.
Hello.
Today we're going to be a little bit more conversational and talk a little bit about our experiences with tabletop RPGs, stories that we have, fun stuff that's happened to us. Well, we figured we did 3 episodes already of more, content-heavy stuff. It'd be nice to just take a break and just talk about, the stories that come out of the game that we love playing so much.
Actually, I have a question for you, Arthur. As of right now, and I know this is always changing, especially since we keep hopping between games, but right now, which game is like either your favorite or the one that you want to play the most? Like as of right now.
I'd have to say Masks. Masks is probably my favorite at the moment, mostly because the system is pretty simple, and I think it's one of those games that allows you to be super creative. Everybody who sits down at the table has the ability to uh, participate in the story in big ways. The GM's job is um,
Less. Is that the answer? You're looking for less intensive?
yeah, the GM's job is a bit less intensive, where they're allowed to let the players make a lot of decisions for themselves and kind of world build with each other, especially through the way character creation works in that, which we talked about before. Having those questions and answering those questions really helps world build for the really helps the players world build, and the GM can look at those answers and kind of put together a world based on what everybody's kind of agreed on at the table. That, and also I just like how the system works in general. I like what it does to kind of make players interact with each other. I think that's a big issue with a lot of other games is player interaction is a lot less important than player GM interaction. When in that game, especially when we were playing it back in the day, there were times where four we had 4 players, and 2 of us were having conversations and the other 2 were having completely different conversations, but it was all happening at the same time. And we were having conversations in character, of course. Maybe we didn't pay attention to what the other characters were talking about, but it's kind of more character focused game anyway, so you're focused more on what yourself is saying to who you're talking to. And I think the way the game is set up to have questions asked at the end of the session that help further your progression in the game as a team and as an individual character is pretty unique and helpful.
Yeah, I can see that. A lot of those are why I usually pick a game like Masks for starting new players generally, because I love the creativity you can get in there, especially since superheroes are kind of the new thing right now. I think that's also why it's like a fairly popular game because like with all of like the Marvel and the DC, people are like, "No, we just want to play like Teen Titans. Can we do that? Can we go back to the good old days of Teen Titan?"
Yeah, the good old days of Teen Titan, of course.
Yeah, good old days before that new Teen Titan Go or whatever. I haven't watched it, but I know people aren't happy. I don't know why.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but there's reasons for that. Um, but anyway, yeah. So Masks is one of them, and the other. I think that's the one that really I've been focusing on in my head, like wanting to
Does
play.
the new book also have anything to do with it,
Yeah,
or is
yeah,
it
yeah. The fact that there's a new book with new character
new
types,
playbooks?
yeah, with new playbooks and stuff, and a ton of ideas coming out of there. Super exciting.
Yeah,
That I think the stories that come out of that game tend to be a lot more like fun to hear about, I guess.
I mean it's basically like a movie or a show. That's the kind of the way those games kind of play. I find you kind of want to emulate one of those. The book itself says, "Oh, you should try to emulate a comic book," but I generally find it's easier for a movie because a movie is a lot clearer in most people's mind, rather than okay, and then on the very next panel we have that, and like on like a 2-page panel we see a giant fight like between all of you going off or something like that. Just seems hard to transition. But everyone knows what like the new superhero movies like. It's just very clean cinematography that we can easily like take stuff from, and even like the animated shows. It's like a very easy thing to transition over. I find, which is why I love GMing that game because it's I get to use like oh the scene shifts over and we see you guys like in like the new SSE mobile or some nonsense like that, or you're all in the lift because one of you have like a sponsorship with Lyft for some reason. Something as stupid as that.
What about you? Like, what game right now?
So right now, I'm so right now a lot of it comes down to what I'm already playing. Mostly right now I'm mostly focused on a Stars Without Number. I also have an Apocalypse World that's kind of on the back burner for right now. But what I want to play most of all is again something probably like Masks. I don't know if it'd be Masks or Apocalypse World, like a different in a different setting. But the one I have right now is set in basically New York.
The Apocalypse World you
Around
said, right?
yeah, Apocalypse World is set in New York. Like around 2000 is when the apocalypse happened. So we don't have the iPhones because oh my God, imagine if we had iPhones during the apocalypse. Whew, man, life would be so different compared to all those movies that tell us. But I kind of want a crunchy game at the same time. I know they're coming out with a new Stars Without Number second edition right now, but that's kind of in beta, so a lot of it is changing, and I don't want to play a campaign where one session I say this and the next session is like, oh, they just changed it, so everything we know before is now gone and out the window. So I'm kind of staying away from that. It looks really good, but I want them to work on it a bit longer. I think probably something like Burning Wheel, or even like the oh God, what's it called? Or Shadowrun, something really crunchy I could get into as well. Just because I can play anything. I don't even have to GM. I'm willing to play those games because those games, Burning Wheel, it's the system that interests me. Shadowrun is the universe. Shadowrun has such a already like detailed universe that's set in stone just from the source material alone. Whereas Burning Wheel, I don't know if it has as much source material, but the mechanics of the game are very interesting. Like you do basically your entire life story, uh, leading up, like during character creation, up until you play, which I think is a very interesting way to do character creation where it's so detailed. Like, yeah, for 3 years you were there, and then for 2 years you were there. Oh, but you lost something there, so the next few years you were there, and then we reached to today where you are now like 26 years old. And I just find that very interesting for at least a character just character creation alone. I think I would love to just run through that and see where it could get.
Yeah. I've been kind of in the mood for a simpler game. I don't know why, just something to pass the time with. But I can see that. I haven't played a crunchy campaign or a crunchy system in a while. It'd be nice. I guess we're playing Stars right now, so I guess
I
that.
wouldn't say Stars is crunchy though.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the system feels archaic, but overall the tools are very simplistic.
Well, archaic in a good way.
Yeah, because I don't know if I've said it before on the podcast, but it's a Renaissance style game. So those type of games are very molded in the sense of oh the original D&D or like AD&D where
Yeah, I think when we were talking about character
yeah,
death a couple episodes ago, we talked about.
yeah, and this is a kind of the game where I know that the creator of the game also said that he didn't think there was anything too unique about his actual game. What he cared more about was world creation, and I take a lot of tools from there because there are a lot of tools in there that are very interesting to see in action, and it makes a lot of sense, but never before have there been ways to be I want it to be random or I want it to be spontaneous
Yep.
kind of when I'm doing it. So there's actually in Stars Without Numbers, I haven't told you guys about this, but there's actually a thing called the GM turn. So it's faction turn. The basically you're playing with the factions in the universe, and through there you're able to say, oh, this government is doing this thing and they're targeting that group because that group over there has the materials they want, or they screwed them to some degree, or that corporation is now funding that thing. And it's all done through a series of roles and like a lot of spreadsheets. So if you're not a fan of spreadsheets, you don't have to do it. But I find that that system itself allows for some interesting things that you as the GM you don't necessarily need to plan for. And I think that leaves your campaign, especially as a GM, a lot more open ended for the players. And the one example I've seen online of someone using it in Swansong from Role Play with Adam Coble as the GM. He did like a mini series on his own YouTube channel where he showed it in action. And I watched only a few episodes of that because I wasn't too into being a GM at that time. But since then, I've been kind of like looking back and forth. It's like, oh, that was like interesting. But I know that an interesting way is by using those tools to create basically a new scenario every time after the GM turn, like the faction turn is being used. Because if a faction did something, I'm like, well, that affected the planet directly. Well, therefore, the entire planet is now this kind of way. So now when they visit that planet, this thing is going to happen.
No, and as a player, those kinds of those things that are set up by the GM make creating a backstory super awesome and helpful for for a player.
Well, yeah, because sometimes because it's unique because it's happening when the game has already been set. So it's like in between sessions, the GM does this and says, "Oh yeah, so this government has now fucked that government up, or they're now like they're spies on that planet who are looking for this thing." But as players, you guys don't necessarily know these things, but I can throw it in willy-nilly. I'm like, "Oh yeah, on the news, there's been bombings in this area, so people have been warned to stay away from there." And it kind of also makes the world feel more alive. It's not centered only on the players. Like the governments are only up, like they're up and running and all that. So it's very interesting. I don't usually put too much emphasis because I like the emphasis being on my players most of the time. But if they're like, oh yeah, what's going on? Like what's happening around? I always have something I can fall back on. Like, oh yeah, you see on the news that the mass murderer has been caught like 5 sectors over, and suddenly like there's a trial happening in 2 weeks from now or something along those lines.
The other thing I like about Stars Without Number from a more character creation perspective is the fact that there are only really three classes, but what you can do within those is super varied, and it's different than maybe a more class focused game like Pathfinder or D&D, where your class kind of progresses in similar ways to other people in your class. Even though you can change it up a little bit, and Pathfinder has a lot of options.
Yeah, you have like archetypes or something like that, or like, oh no, I mean, again, there's always I think there's more customization available in generally at least for D&D and Pathfinder. In Stars Without Numbers, you can choose the psychic, and that has the most customizability just because you get a whole extra thing that no one else does in exchange for having HP, of course. But I find it very generally in stars I can make any character using an expert if I try hard enough. In D&D I cannot make any character using a single class, which I really enjoy for stars cuz it's sort of like, "Oh, what were you playing?" "Oh, I was playing a warrior who focused on using swords." And if I said that in D&D, I said, "Yeah, I was a barbarian that focused on using bows." People were like, "You took the archetype." Right? I'm like, "What do you mean I took the archetype?" It just doesn't work. Your playstyle is kind of set in stone depending on what you pick beforehand.
Yeah, and the other thing with stars too is you can kind of add those character background things too, where let's say you have a warrior, right? But he could also be a chef or a
Yeah, because they
have
have the
interests
training
outside of
background
just
and they have
fighting.
the training
Yep.
background. No, sorry, the training package and the background package. So for those who don't know, Stars Without Numbers has two things where a training package is essentially you are trained as a warrior or you're trained as an expert. What are you trained in exactly? Were you a warrior who was like a bandit going out killing people and like sticking them up in the middle of space, or were you like an adventurer who was just doing whatever to get money, or were you maybe like like not a mercenary but like a guard, like you were a caravan guard who protected like ships out there and you like occasionally ran into trouble, or were you part of the military maybe and you've just recently like got discharged or you decided to leave for whatever reason, like. And I think it helps a lot. I know 5e has introduced backgrounds when it first came out, and at the time I was like, this is revolutionary. This means all the stuff I said like in my past I was an XX whatever, now it actually has an effect on the game. And now I kind of see it in a different light. I'm not sure how you feel about backgrounds, at least for D&D, but when I tried to homebrew something, and I was sticking kind of close to the book. This is the one where I said about the floating islands, my own little universe. There were some backgrounds that were impossible. I could not get a sailor because you're on a floating island. How do you sail? Oh, be a hermit. You're on a floating island. It's a very small island. You can't be a hermit away from everyone very easily. You can't really be like a plainsman. You can't like some of those things are just really hard to implement. And yeah, I could have like, oh, we can make an exception or work our way into it. But at the same time, it's like, well, now we can't get that ability that the sailor had or like the folk hero had or something like that just because I can't give you that background, which kind of sucks. So I do think it kind of hurt a bit in the homebrew aspect, but I still like the concept of your RP background or your backstory has an impact on how you will play in the future, which is really cool. And it's not just RP that limits it.
And those backgrounds have a lot of choice and customization within themselves, don't they? Or at least there are different types of each background, I think.
For
I know, like,
5e or stars?
for 5e.
For 5e, there's a decent amount. I haven't read the Guide to Everything, the newest 5e book out yet, but I imagine that they added a few things in there. I know they've brought back a few things that people were asking for, so I can see them bringing in some more backgrounds in there.
I actually haven't played enough 5e to really comment a lot on it itself. Usually groups I play with tend to want to play 3.5 or Pathfinder.
I still consider 5e if so. How about actually? This is a question that I'm curious about. If you were to recommend a game to a first timer, which one would it be? Like just in general.
Something powered by the apocalypse, I think. It depends what they're looking for too, you know. So
Like so, let's use an example because we have the club. So we both worked. We both were in the gaming club, and we introduced RPGs at the same time to the club. And when we did that, obviously everyone said, "Oh, we're playing D&D, right?" Well, obviously we had to do D&D because it's D&D.
that's what people were asking for, yeah.
Yeah, but do you think we could have done like Apocalypse, or do you think it would have been too hard? Because it's so you need to be such a niche, like sort of like you have to be a group beforehand before playing the game kind of deal.
I think what was good with what we did in our club, I think what D&D is good for is making pre-mades that you can kind of like not flex into, but you know, you pick a pre-made and
You do
you
what
maybe
you
have
want.
one or two comments about, you know, background or whatever because it's 5e and you have the background there, but then you can kind of play the character however you want.
Yeah, everything is a suggestion essentially.
Like let's say instead of 5e you went with masks or something. um it's kind of harder to make those pre-made sheets for a game like masks because so much of it is about your interaction with other players.
Yep.
So basically what we set up was we invited a bunch of people to come at night to this one big event space in the school, and there were like four GMs, and basically four players each GM would sit around the table and just play a quick one shot campaign. So maybe it was like an hour and a half or 2 hour storyline, and there was maybe like 3 or 4 fights. It was a pretty basic story, but we had pre-made characters for everybody, and because of that, especially with the way 5e works, you can jump right into the campaign without really having to talk to each other that much. I'm not entirely sure. I wasn't playing or GMing. We were both kind of running our own thing off to the side while everyone was playing.
Yeah, because no one wanted to play with us, Arthur.
No. It's because
That's what
we
happened.
organized it. We wanted to make sure everything was going smoothly. But I'm not entirely sure how they dealt with the session zero-ish type stuff, like meeting all the characters meeting each other and all that jazz. But I think the problem with if we were to use masks down there or any powered by the apocalypse game is there'd be so much prep time wasted. Not wasted, but there's so much prep time preparing character relationships in that game that we would have lost a good hour at least to that.
Yeah. Well, so when I use this example, I'm talking more about the weekly games that we had.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, yeah, it's a concept in this one where you would have to. I understand with apocalypse games, you have to put a lot of prep time. That's why 5e is very convenient. You just hop right in, which I definitely agree is a big benefit when you do it. But I'm thinking for like the weekly games we had each semester, how do you think it would have handled there? Do you think it would have been possible, or do you think it would have been hard?
I think it would have been possible, but I think the issue is when for for the newer players that we were getting in, Stranger Things had just come out. And they were were interested in D&D as the option, and we got away with Pathfinder in a lot of cases because we would tell them, hey, or they would know what Pathfinder was, or they were familiar with it, or we'd tell them, it's very similar to D&D. It's just got a little more, it's got a little more options and a bit more, number crunching and stuff like that. But I think we could have got away with it if we had the right group, because again, we were in an interesting situation where a lot of the people, like half of the people knew what they were doing, or half the people had played D&D before, and the other half of the people hadn't. Um, it's one of those things where, of course, you'd have to ask your players, like, hey, what game do you want to play beforehand? I think if we offered it as an option, I think there would have been people who took it. But the other issue I have with games, though, like Masks or other powered by the Apocalypse games, the issue I have with those games is because we only had a semester, getting a full story out. Yeah, getting a full story out would have been really difficult. Especially a story that allows for character progression, because those games are so focused on character progression that having such a limited time, you would need to have started it first semester and then ended it second
Yeah,
semester.
I guess that's true. Now that I think about it, didn't even think about that. Well, I mean, to be fair, our mass campaign we basically started in this like halfway through the second semester, and we almost finished. We almost finished within that
I
semester.
wouldn't say we were anywhere near finished.
For me, I think so, but
Okay.
again,
Yeah,
I
well, you were
can't.
GMing it. You know
I
what the
was
story
GM.
was.
Well,
So.
it's more along the lines of you were all beginning to reach points where you were all going to have to either run out of characters because we did it because I purposely gave you guys faster ways to gain XP.
Yeah.
Purely for yeah, we don't have a lot of time, so let's try to speed through this game as fast as
Yeah.
possible. And because I remember you were almost able to just choose when you want to fight your doom.
Yeah.
And I was like, Arthur, if you pick that, the campaign is basically over. Because at that point, you're no longer doomed. So either you get a new character and we start season two, or we're just going to have to end it before that happens.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think with the doomed, with you being a doomed, I think there was a bit more of a clock than you realize.
Oh, for
Because
sure.
I was
Yeah.
like, we can't get new characters in this without me hitting a deadline and being like, okay, guys, whatever story thing we had or the plot line that was going on, we have to move it along to something else because we there's a new person. They don't know what's going on. Either that or your character's dead, Arthur. You gotta get a new one now.
Yeah, but we also played pretty consistently
We
as
played
well.
like every week, which I was very
Yeah.
happy about.
And these groups, most of the time they played consistently, but usually around midterms and finals, things would start to fall off a little bit. I mean, I was in the first year we did these. I was in a Pathfinder campaign that did not end.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't think you even finished the second one you did for
No,
this
no, yeah, both of those.
semester.
We had first semester we didn't finish, and second semester we didn't finish either. Or no, it was second semester.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. We did it 3 semesters. We did it for well, you were in it for 3 semesters. I was in it for 4, but the first one was a really bad test run. It was just how far I could get away with it, and it just didn't work in that scenario.
senior year first semester we didn't finish,
Yeah.
but we did finish
Yep.
senior year second semester, and that was a lot to do with our GM being really good at abridging stuff or taking certain fights out and knowing how to budget their time. Um, as opposed to the second GM we had who had no idea how to budget her
Well, I
time.
mean, the first one too. He also didn't. That was his first time
Yeah,
GMing.
no,
To
and
be
he did a
fair.
good job. And also, I think we skipped like weeks.
Yeah, we skipped a couple weeks because it was still very new to most of us on how this kind of thing went consistently.
Yeah, and that's some even outside of college and everything like that. Sometimes games just kind of fail and fall flat because if your schedules don't line up, or you're not really meeting every week, it gets a lot. It becomes difficult to actually complete anything.
Yeah, which I think is kind of the biggest problem generally with games. It's not, oh yeah, I hated that person, or no, yeah, I just didn't gel with them. I think the biggest problem is, yep, we just kind of fell out of it because the time. Because when you first get into it, you're just in love with it. You're like, oh, I want to keep playing my character. But for some people, that kind of just disappears over time.
Which is why I usually tend to like shorter campaign ideas. So not one of those 5-year epics, but more of a we'll play this for a year. We'll see when we feel like it's gonna end. It's gonna end. And to do that, a lot of the times you have to rush character progression, or give XP bonuses.
Really quickly, depending on the game, yeah.
Yeah, or add a goal system to Dungeons and Dragons, which is something you like to do.
That's 'cause it's just a nice way to move it along. Because like I I argue strongly for it, just because from the example when we did it with two people, one I wanted you guys to have fun, so it was like, oh yeah, we move it faster along. But also it was along the idea of like now I know as a GM what you want to do, so I can still throw it in or say the option is a possibility. Rather than be like, I didn't know you wanted to do that. Okay, yeah, I get, yeah, sure, maybe next time. Rather than it's all in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I think he would like that. I think he would like that. Rather than you tell me, no, my goal is to kill a unicorn. I'm like, okay. Well, if you ever tell someone important that in game, then yeah, a unicorn will be available. Rather than you just asking out of the blue, hey, is there a unicorn anywhere? And I'm just like, no, there's no unicorn anywhere. Why would there be a unicorn here?
And that game was unique though, because first of all, it was me, you, and our roommate. If we were all free, we would just play. And the other thing too with that is, that's one of the only games I've ever played that lasted more than a couple months or more than a year. Because we played that for what, almost 3 years.
No, it's a year and a half actually.
It did last longer though than most games I play.
Yeah, same for me. Most games, there's just always something coming up, which it comes with the hobby. Unfortunately, it just sucks. I think online games can kind of solve that, but at the same time,
Even then, timing it's all about timing.
yeah, it sucks because I used to play with an online group. Unfortunately, I have gotten a dog, and they live in
Unfortunate.
Australia. Yeah, unfortunately, I have a dog. No, I love my dog, but it's unfortunate because I used to love playing with them. It's because they live in Australia. I live on the east coast of the United States, and that's a really rough time to fit. It's not like, hey, you guys free in the middle of the day. It's like, are you up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Because we want to play. And then I was like, I would muscle through it because I'm like, I want to play. I'm gonna play. Yeah, I'm gonna play. Let's go. And then every time someone like during the hours I'm sleeping, someone's like, I just can't make it. And I wake up at 4. I'm like, God, fuck it, and I just go back to sleep. Or I actually stay up and then like I last until 9 and I'm like, I need to go back to sleep. This is too hard. I can't go any longer. But those games were always interesting, and I didn't even get to GM that. That was like, I think as a player, probably going to be my favorite time, just because we played so many games and we didn't really stick with just one campaign. Because we did have people leaving, coming and going, like, oh, I can no longer play with you guys because of, oh, I got sick, or hey, something showed up and I'm just not like I'm no longer able to play at this time, which did suck because we lost a lot of people, and I'm one of those people that now left. But it was so cool that I got to meet other people who were like, I would never move to the city, and I was like, oh wow, it's interesting because I would never leave the city.
Yeah.
So there's no way in hell we would ever have like met up unless by accident, really.
No, most of my games I've played face to face. I don't play online games that often. But now I am, because school's over and I don't really have like a big pool of people I could go and ask to play with.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really sucks when that
it sucks.
happens.
Yeah, that's why we finished our campaign, our college campaign when we did, because I feel like if we knew we were gonna live together this year and stuff, we would have kept going with it. But I mean, now
Yeah.
the three of us live. I mean, we still live relatively nearby each other, but
Relatively close in terms of like driving, but I think only one of us has a car,
I
so
mean, I don't even have a license, so
exactly. So it's a bit hard for us to all play together. But like I think something that comes with that is that each game feels very different, and I think it's always the people that make the difference here.
yeah.
Because like you said, the game that we had as roommates was very unique because I could push for wackier things because I knew you guys were up for it and we already agreed beforehand. And also, because like if I did bad one week, I'm like, okay, next week we just solve that problem. I just ask you, did I do okay? Did you hate the fight? Did you think the fight was too easy, too hard? That way I can balance it for next time. And you guys always gave me pretty good feedback. The problem was, especially early on, you guys were like, "It's just great, it's just great." Until that one session, you guys like, "We hated it. Fuck you." And I was like, "Ah, finally I have a low note. Now I have somewhere to fall down on, rather than."
It never got lower than that session.
Yeah, and I'm
To be
I'm so
fair,
happy that that's the case.
although we still give you shit for
Well,
that.
yeah, but I mean, if it was one of my early sessions, I'm very proud of that as a GM. That's the, maybe it's just a really bad session, so there's no way anything can top it. But it makes me proud that like in roughly like a year and a half, that you guys didn't really hate a session more than that one, and that was like probably like the fifth or sixth session I ever did for
Yeah,
you
I think it was
guys.
sixth. What? How much experience GMing had you had at that point?
I had GM'd for another group of friends that I knew in high school, and we were all in college. But again, they didn't know how the game worked. I knew how it has a as a player. I knew how it worked, but I always wanted to GM at that point, mainly because I thought GMing seems a lot more fun than being a player from my perspective. I was like, oh, I could do so much more. I get to set these like storylines kind of deal. I can make a story, and I don't necessarily have to put a plot attached. I kind of there are things I kind of wish I knew back then when I was starting off. There are things I think I did pretty well even as a first time GM that I'm quite impressed with by myself at this point, actually. One of them being I put a level 20 NPC with the group, but I always managed to have the NPC doing something else that they couldn't do, but they had a very important thing to do nonetheless. So, like, an example was they all got to a bridge, and there was, like, an ogre's like, you need to play the troll toe, and they're like, you're an ogre. He's like, well, I want to be a troll, and then starts attacking them, and he has, like, these pet frogs. He has a lot of pet animals, like, under the bridge. And they're like, we can't beat any of those because if they just pull us down there, we won't survive. So the high level NPC was like, I'll take care of those. You just deal with this ogre who thinks he's a troll, and then he just dove under. And when they finished the fight, he finished the fight essentially. But the entire time, it was like, oh, I'm helping you guys, but I'm not being the star of this little campaign that we're doing. It just gave me an option to be like, no, I can ask you questions as a GM, as an NPC that's always following you around. Or you can ask me in character, hey, what do you think we should do? And I'd be like, great, now I can give an answer without being like, the voice from the sky says, look to your right, dumbasses, and to your right you see the goblet of fiery hell, like something like that. I never wanted to do anything like that. I wanted them to figure most of things out, or if they really needed help, they just like, yo, NPC, you haven't said. She's like, oh, sorry, I thought we already figured it out. Sorry, I kind of blanked out, kind of deal. Which I'm surprised that I came to that conclusion because that character was one I played before in another campaign. I was like, yeah, it's gonna be so much fun. I get that personality. And then when I saw my combat options, I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is a good idea anymore. They're like level 5, level 20 is not a good thing to mix with level 5s.
Yeah.
So I always balanced it around them as opposed to me because I was like, I don't want them not to have fun. This is
Well,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
this is not a fun experience.
Yeah, you don't want one person just taking charge the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, you said you've GM'd a few games before. Is there any like one game for you that was like that was my best moment as a GM? Because I have like a few of those here and there. Like one of those I think was for me, definitely something in every Saturday, but it might even have been like the first session or something like that. Like the cinematic one, because I think we were having so much fun with that, even though we weren't really doing anything.
Yeah, when it comes to me, I GM'd a lot in not a lot in high school, but maybe my freshman year and a little bit of my sophomore year of high school I GM'd, and then one of my friends took over, and he was a lot better. I didn't hate GMing, but there's no moment in my head that really sticks out as something that I did that was really cool or interesting. For the most part, I kind of stuck to modules. I kind of relied on them. I would throw some things in once in a while though if my players did something that the module didn't have outlined. I think like adjusting to what my players were doing was something I was good at, but or at least adjusting outside of the module to what my players were doing was something I was good at. But can't really say that I had a moment where I was like, "Oh wow, I'm a great GM." And most of my experiences were stressful.
Well, so let me change the question. What about as a player? What was your like? That was amazing as a player for me because I know every player has a story. Like my guy was just there surrounded by like 15 goblins or some shit, and he just came up with an idea and like killed them all or something. Because there's always like not that extreme to a degree, but there's always some idea someone can come up with generally.
Sure, most of my ideas end up backfiring, but that's what I love most about them. I think my favorite moment as you'll know that you know the story already. Do you know what I'm going to talk about?
Is this the circus?
No. The circus was great too.
Oh,
No, this
oh,
is the
oh.
vampire.
Ah, the
So
vampire.
one of my greatest. So Justin and I. This is part of that every Saturday campaign that we played. Every so often we would do solo sessions where Justin would take either me or our friend aside and do a session just the two of them, or the two of us, me and Justin alone. And it really allowed our character to kind of go out and do their own thing or try to get their goals settled.
Or just do random shit that I came up with at the time, fun stuff like that.
There was one in the middle where we were getting ready for this big tournament, and we were each my character and our friend's character were each sponsored by a different god, and that god came to me or to my character and was like, "Hey, I'm the god of hunting." I played a gunslinger who was into hunting, so it made sense that I would. He's the god of strength, but he also had hunting underneath him. His name was Cord. It would make sense that Cord was Dordry's god. Dordry's my character. And he's like, I need your help really fast, and this will be good training too. You need to go to this city and find this vampire that's been messing with people. And so I was like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna go to this city and find this thing out. So I go to the city alone, and along the way, I'm asking people in the city for information. There's this homeless man who's like, I saw a vampire, but he won't say anything more. And I paid him like 100 gold, and he was like, yeah, I definitely saw one this morning or last night. Not the morning because vampires and suns don't agree, but like, but he wouldn't say any more. And I think I ended up paying him like 3,000,
You
a
paid him
thousand
close to a
gold by the end of
thousand
that whole
by the
day.
end of that day.
Um,
Yeah.
Eventually I found out. Well, I went to this one place where I thought the vampire might be, and there was a man there, and I said to him, "Are you or have you seen a vampire?" To which he was the vampire I was looking for. So either way, he mind controlled my character. I failed the will save, and all of a sudden a day passes, and my character's like, oh, "There's no vampires here. I'm gonna leave."
Yeah.
Only to come to his senses after about a day and be like, "Wait a minute, that was definitely the vampire." So I
Yeah, so you go back to town, talk to the same
go back
guy
down, talked to
again.
the same guy, had a description of the guy I was looking for now, which was nice, and he ended up each god who had a champion I think they had 3 or 4 champions each. It ended up he was living in the house of one of my god's other champions, who was a minotaur named Iron Bull. And Iron Bull had been mind controlled by him to completely ignore him and to defend him and all that stuff. So I'm like, I don't know how to get him out of this house. I don't have any equipment. I don't have like silver bullets or anything that's going to really help me fight this guy. Um, but what I did have was a connection in the city. There's a whole side story there, but I'm gonna pass over that. Eventually, I get my hands on a bunch of bombs, and I decide that the best way to fight this vampire is wait till the middle of the day when wait till the afternoon when the sun's highest, and blow up this house.
Now, to be fair, it was more of a shack just because of how
Shack,
destroyed
yeah.
it was.
But to blow up this shack so that the vampire was stuck in the sun and would eventually die. And just so he couldn't escape, I was gonna also put garlic around where the hole would be where the house used to be. So I put a whole bunch of garlic down. I rigged the place up with bombs by sneaking in there, and then Iron Bull got caught wind of me. I ran as fast as I could after lighting the fuse, and the whole building exploded. I ended up killing Iron Bull, but not the vampire.
Yeah, that was. Because I remember telling you later on, you do realize that his order was to defend the house, right? And you're like, oh.
Oh yeah, he stayed in the house as it exploded. So I ended up killing my ally and not killing the person I was supposed to.
I mean, you still killed him in the end, but
Yeah,
not
I ended up
everyone was
shooting
happy
him,
with
but
the result.
yeah, I ended up shooting him. But Cord was very unhappy. I had to go res Iron Bull and waste even more money, even more of my own money, because at this point we were pretty rich at this point in the campaign.
Yeah.
But so usually we're talking about these ideas that I've had. A lot of them are along those lines where I'm like, oh, here's a cool way I could solve this puzzle or solve kill this thing,
The
and
most
it
recent memory for
usually
me of that was the circus.
yeah, and it usually ends up backfiring in.
Yeah, so the one I'm talking about, the circus, is there's like an evil circus in town essentially. You guys were sent to that town to be like, okay, we need to find all these druids, and you find out that all the druids, obviously you figure out on your own. Oh yeah, all the druids have been turned into the animals of the circus.
I met the ringmaster was standing in the middle of the circus after the show. I walked up to him and I go, "Wow, you have a lot of animals here." He's like, "Yeah, sure. We have a very wide collection of animals." And my Dorji just looks at him straight in the face. He goes, "How many of them are druids?"
And the guy just dies immediately because there are demons all around him who are holding him hostage. So also in that scenario, the plan was originally, oh yeah, you guys will like go from tent to tent and fight the demons off and stuff like that. Make it easy. Because you said that in the middle out loud to everyone and he just died, all the demons fought you at once, surrounding you. So I think that was a very, for me, it was really funny for me because I was like, Arthur, you just screwed yourself there pretty harshly.
I almost died in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, you almost died every fight. You almost died every fight, Arthur.
I was gonna ask a different question that I just thought of right now. Um, and this can be NPCs or it could be player characters. What is your favorite character you've created for a campaign?
Okay, can I give
You
multiple
can actually,
answers?
I'll let you do like top five.
Top five. Okay, I think I can do top
Because you
three.
make a lot of NPCs. You know what I mean. So those count. I'm counting those.
Okay, so I think for PC, top one in my heart, Peter Cook. So he's a character I made in the Stars Without Number campaign with my friends. And the general concept was, oh, we're starting this game up. You want to join? I was like, sure. And then they had already like done character creation and all that. But Stars Without Number character creation is really quick, easy, and I know the system very well, so I could finish it in like 5 minutes if I really wanted to. So I was like, what do you guys have? They're like, oh, we have a captain, an AI pilot, and we have like, oh, not a AI pilot, but like an AI like war machine, and we have a pilot who basically like bamboozles everyone consistently. I'm like, you know what you guys are missing? A cook. So I decided to be Peter Cook, the chef. He was a Frenchman who every time like he was a decent cook, but whenever he heard like a bad review of his food, he would go out on a mission and basically try to kill them every single time. He was also a warrior, by the way, which speaks a lot to the customizability of Stars Without Number. I was like, yeah, he used to hunt out in the wild by himself until he heard of like this guy named Gordon Ramsay and something about French food when he was young. He's like, I'm going to do that. So he's like went out there as like a mercenary for the longest time to feed himself and try new food. And then eventually he set up his own shop called the Spotted Rat. Oh, sorry, no, the chopped squirrel is what it was, and he was the only one who had any like intergalactic squirrels. That campaign was very interesting because half the time it was the other three doing their own stuff, and the other half was, guys, there's a cooking competition, or guys, I found some cooking ingredients that I need to get my hands on. And everyone, whenever I told, guys, we're gonna go get those ingredients, everyone was like, I like that plan. Let's go do it right now. I was like, what about the stuff you guys are doing? Like, this is way more important because your thing actually makes us money. We almost get killed every time we do our own thing. And I was like, okay, I'm down for that. Yeah, let's go. So, my favorite example, we didn't play very much of this, but my favorite was Peter Cook went, he's like, okay, I found these rare birds in the black market. Now I'm going to make a deal. I'm going to put on a persona. I am going to be Monsieur Bonbon. Now, Monsieur Bonbon is the best chef in all of, I can't even remember the name of the planet, but he was the best chef of that planet. And obviously the guy's like, who the fuck is Monsieur Dubois? He's like, are you confusing me with Monsieur Bonbon? And he's like, no, I don't know any Bonbon. He's like, I am insulted greatly. For this, I have to treat you to a meal of my cooking to make you understand my name for the rest of your life. And he's like, okay, yeah, sure. Cook me something. And I was like, cool. So I waited till after, and I was like, I told the crew, follow us because most likely the birds will also be wherever we're going. So we find more birds at like in the warehouse that he's making me serve him. I decide to cook a meal that takes 5 hours to make. That way I can be sure that they can get the food and out. I had to make like 5 rolls to pull this off. Because it was one, like I had to be charismatic enough to convince them, no, it's gonna be great. Two more for like cooking. Another one for teaching someone else how to cook with me. And then the last one to tell them, I don't even want the birds. And like very charismatically like walk away even though we had taken all the birds and convinced them, oh, you don't need to go check on them. Stuff like that. And when we pulled it off, I was told, yeah, these birds can sell for like, if we try, like 1,000,000 credits. And I was like, no, these are my birds. I'm cooking these birds. And everyone in the crew was like, but it's the money. I'm like, no, no, no. You don't seem to understand. I'm in charge now. I have all the money. All these birds are mine. And that entire campaign was the most fun because my character was so wacky, which I loved. And I don't usually get to make wacky characters in games as a player, which I think is why Peter Cook, I got to be so swingy with him. Like 1 second he's happy, next second he's like, I have to go get the seasoning shotgun. We are having human tonight. And it was just a fun experience for me.
Yeah, how NPC character?
I think NPC, the mayor maybe for Nassar. He was a fun one at the beginning.
Yeah, so the was the mayor of the town that
For stars that for every Saturday.
my character
Yeah.
Dordry. For every Saturday, my character Dordry was the guild member
Yeah.
of this town with this mayor
Yes.
called the mayor. We never learned his real name.
Yeah, even when he became a god, he was still known only as the mayor, even though one of our players became the mayor as well. They just called her Mayor Kimby instead.
It was Dordry and Kimby were the two player characters.
So I enjoyed the mayor, especially at the beginning, but I feel like a lot of it just became more of a plot tool later on, and not like his own character. So I think that's why I can't say I enjoyed him as much. Uh, Probably Swifty. I know we only used Swifty like 2 times,
Oh boy.
but he was always a fun one for me. Yeah, so Swifty was another character in every Saturday that they went to another continent, and the other player, Kimby, wanted to get a magical lance. He's like, well, I have this magical lute that was supposed to be cursed, that whenever I have it, it tries to make me play it, and it will just keep screaming in my head until I play it, and will only be quiet when I play it. The problem is the only way you can make it stop is if you get like if you lose a magical like a music contest against someone else, but the loot automatically gives you a plus 20. So what happens as a result is you really can't lose. But Kimby, being the resourceful person that they were, got a basilisk tooth because it is magical and it can hurt magical items. Proceeded to keep stabbing the loot until the loot said, "Please stop, I don't want to do anymore." And then Kimby just kind of held on to the loot until she's like, "Oh, I have a magical item. Could you turn this into something else?" And there was just a single guy in a bar who's like, "Oh, I can do something about that." And then they go into like a shady alley and all that. And he proceeds to now keep in mind this is a very homebrewed setting. And this is not balanced in any way. This character wasn't going to fight. He never fought. He was just there for comedic purposes and for functional purposes, really. So so she's like, "Oh, how are you gonna change that?" "Oh boy, I can change anything. Just give me the magic." And then he's like, grabs the lance and the loot and starts smashing it on the table, puts it in the fire, rubs it a little bit, and it becomes a lance. So what Swifty is able to do in game sense is he's able to basically transform anything at will. As long as he's like, "Oh yeah, I just need to put some good old magic and some love into it, and it'll be anything I want it to be." So yeah, so it could be like you could turn like a table into like a regular cat. Like there were no limits. The only problem was the personality. But the personality was so fun because it was so unhinged, I think was what it was. Because he would do anything for magic. Like he wanted to like soak himself in magic potions. He didn't want to drink it. He just wanted to soak. And it was like, "Oh, I want to make a tray." It's like, "How much magic do you got?" I don't know what these potions are. It's like, "Good enough. Just give it to me." "Oh boy, that's the stuff right there." And I'm just like, "Okay, well, you just threw away like a potion of invisibility, some like bonuses, some like true sight and whatnot." And he's just like, "I don't care." And it was very interesting because I was like, I want a fun character on this continent. Let's try to make a fun one. And that was the first idea that popped in my head at the time. I don't know. Did Dordry ever interact with him? I know you met the brother.
Never.
Never, right?
No. No. Dordry never met
Yeah.
Swifty.
I don't think we ever met Swifty again, did we? Oh no, no, he did. He did come to.
He
He
showed up at
came
the
to the
end.
party, right? He came to the last party, but everyone else was just like, oh yeah, and you guys just did. We didn't stop talking about it for a while after he showed up
I mean, we still even will mention Swifty every once in a while.
because he was such like a stupid character. Like that's the kind of character you would find like on D&D Wiki and be like, hey, imagine if my DM let me play this. And then I was like, no, 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 I'm gonna put him in the world. I'm gonna make him broken.
It certainly says something that both the two NPCs you've named so far are both from the same campaign.
Man, I think for the other ones, it's because I always focus so much more on player interaction. So, for example, with every Saturday, I didn't put as much emphasis on you guys talking with one another because I feel like it was already set in stone.
Yeah, but not to, our characters are almost direct opposites, and we weren't going to talk with each other anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, so for me, I had to put NPCs in the way. Like, that's what the whole point of
Yeah.
the interns were.
I think it's fair. Kimby was her character was all into raising animals and she was a cavalier, but she was all into raising animals and had a high handle animal check and all that. And the character herself was a gnome, female, and my Dordry was a gnome male who was a Smurf Neblin, which means the underground gnome. They kind of have gray skin and stuff, and he was all about killing animals. So right off the bat, we didn't build characters together. We just sat down for the first session, explained our characters to each other, and I remember just looking at each other and being like, "This is going to be one interesting ride." As our characters continue to grow to hate each other and resent each other,
Yeah.
but be forced to work together too and succeed.
Yeah, no, I think that was very interesting, at least for that. But it did force me to change things up. I mean, a lot of that campaign was like abnormal in the sense like I wouldn't recommend most of the things I did there, except the goals. I would recommend the goals, but everything else really hard to recommend doing just because it gets dangerous to a degree, especially for a full party. But in other campaigns, I'm not too worried about NPCs. Like in our Masks campaign, I don't think there were really any NPCs that were doing anything mostly because most of them were like adults or mentors. There weren't really any NPCs you guys talked to because your entire clique were each other essentially. You guys mostly talked to each other. You didn't.
Aside from villains.
Yeah, I mean a villain. I like there were funny ideas. Like I had a lot of fun coming up with villains like that for what was his name? Oh God, what was
Storyteller, yeah.
the storyteller? The storyteller had such a, like I remember after that session like he has such a broken ability. Why is he so weak? I'm like he's just weak as a person. That's honestly why he's like a C-list
Because
villain
you're like, oh,
right
you
now.
guys are gonna go second villain you ever are gonna fight. He's like a C-list villain. You don't gotta worry about him. His power is he can put people into books. You're stuck in the world of the book.
It has to be a book he writes though. It cannot be
Oh,
any
yeah,
book.
that's right.
That was the only requirement.
Yeah, but he had a library full of
I
his
know,
own
and
written
you guys are like,
books.
why is he have such a strong ability? And it was just like, you don't really ask those questions anymore.
He's C-list because he doesn't really
He doesn't have
try and do a
ambition. His
bunch of
only
it.
ambition is
Yeah, yeah.
to kill the mime. That's really it.
The mime being a superhero
Who was like
who
the
was a mime.
strongest mime, like strongest hero in the entire world.
Whatever he mimes is really there. It's just invisible.
And it's also basically indestructible whenever he does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was always interesting,
It's a
just
good thing
throwing
he
him
was
as a
hero.
gag character.
He didn't talk at all. He couldn't talk.
Yeah, not that you're
Or
aware of, at
maybe-
least.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I guess if I want to talk about characters I've created or something, it's hard because, well, most of the characters I can think of that I really enjoyed playing were playing in games that you played in, that you GM'd at least. Mostly because I felt like I could kind of go the extra mile. It's hard to choose which character singularly.
I'm trying to think because we played like a lot of
no,
one
it's
shots
true,
just
but I
randomly
think-
off the bat.
I'm somewhere between Sonya and Spore.
Oh, okay, yeah. So give some backstory on those two because we haven't talked about those two at all.
Yeah, we have never talked about those two. So Sonya was my character in Masks. And she was her character sheet was the Doomed. She was, before the campaign started, she was a regular high school student. She was a junior, I think. Like 17 years old or 16
Something
years
like that, yeah.
Yeah, and she kept having her whole life. She's had these really horrifying nightmares, and it usually starts with pain and darkness and maybe some fire. And as she's been growing older, they've gotten more and more detailed to the point where now every time she falls asleep, she sees her friends dying or her family members being killed by her. Either her hands, ripping them apart or all this kind of stuff. So, her mother's very um, spiritual and decides that she's going to bring them back. Her parents are from India. She's going to bring them back to. She's going to bring her to India to go see. I forget exactly the name of like a Hindu priest.
I can't remember the name. It was a while ago.
Yeah, to see this Hindu priest and he sits down with Sonya and he's like, "There's something inside of you that's evil," and I personally I don't have a lot of experience with Hindu culture, but I went online and looked up, the Hindu god of death being Yama or something like that, and so we decided that the interpretation that the Hindu priest gave Sonya was that the Hindu god of death is living inside of her, and that soon or eventually she will give birth, whether that means physically give birth or metaphorically give birth. That god of death would come out of her and destroy the world.
We were almost there. We were so close.
We were almost there before we had to stop playing that campaign.
Yeah.
But because this powerful being, be it a Hindu god or be it just some kind of force that's inside of her, because it's inside of her, she has access to powers that being has access to. So she has telepathy, and she can also create physical constructs. All of her constructs were orange in color, and she wore this this purple outfit. I even had an artist at at MoCA in New York City. Yeah, I even had him come and I did a commission with him to draw the character because I liked playing that character so much. And she was very, very worried about harming innocent people or harming people in general. And the rest of the party, I wouldn't say we're murder hobos, but we had a transformed who was like, I'm just going to beat the crap out of everybody. We had a legacy whose dad was a superhero who like kind of understood like, sometimes you got to take people down and sometimes you got to take them down for good. And we had a protege who kind of had the same kind of mentality where it's like, no, I don't have superpowers. If someone's trying to kill me, I need to know that my team is going to kill them first.
Well, I think it speaks kind of to the game we were playing with our group and also the game itself, Masks, that it leads to so much character development. And again, I didn't spur any of this. It was all you guys. You guys were the ones who were like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, because there was a moment where the protege character was in a situation where he was going to die, and instead of acting on it, Sonya kind of pulled back for a moment because she was like, I'm not going to kill this thing because I'm not going to kill because she's so afraid of the murderous force inside of her that she thinks killing kind of makes it stronger.
Which technically it does.
Which technically it does. Yeah, it does. But after that event, and Justin had nothing to do with this, but the guy, the person who was playing the protege's character, and me had a huge argument in character about the merits of killing off bad guys and killing off enemies.
And I think something else that comes into this game was it felt like there was a different pairing every time we played, which was interesting because there were 4 of you. But it always was like, oh no, I'm going to spend time with this person this session, or I'm going to spend time with that person this session.
Or when we go to break into this villain's lair, me and the Transformed are going to hang out because last time we broke into a lair, me and the protege hung out, and it's nice to get that different.
Yeah, and it's so weird because I didn't say any like, oh yeah, you guys are probably going to run into this.
It wasn't like it wasn't us as players being like, well, I'd like to hang out with a different character now. It was like, in this situation, we have a plan where me as the Doomed, with my superpowers of creating, psychic telekinetic barriers and whatnot, and the Legacy would work really well now as a team because of our powers mixed together would probably help us do this, and that, as opposed to another situation where a different combo leads to a different strategy. So it wasn't because we as players wanted to team up with a different person. It was because the strategies were flipped.
And I find that interesting too because I think that's more like good players, and I think I was very blessed to have you guys because all you guys were always like, on the ball, like, no, I want to do this, I want to do this. Like, no, we should, like, I told you the situation and I didn't have to tell you anything else. You guys were like, okay, Justin, draw us a map, and now here's what we're gonna do. And I was just like, cool, yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, so how many of you can speak Mandarin exactly? Because this might be a bit of a problem.
So I think I like Sonya the best when it comes to her interactions with the other characters around her, um, as well as kind of the arguments and the discussion that kind of took form because of that. And it's funny because the campaign wasn't serious, but it was at those moments at the same time.
Yeah, I remember. It was very hard for me because it was
Yeah.
like I just came out of playing a funny campaign, and then everyone's like, "We want like serious," and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to try." And I didn't really do a great job. It was more like everyone else was better at doing it.
But you know, and so I like Sonya the best in the sense that of her ability to interact with people and the interactions she had. But character alone, like kind of which idea that I've had that I liked the most is Spore. It's SPOREH. It's an acronym. Uh, and this isn't a Stars Without Number campaign. Spore is an AI that comes from an asteroid. So basically, Spore is this robot that was produced by this sentient factory called the Mother Drive or Hive Mother, depending on the situation. And it's basically this facility that was created who knows when.
I do. I know.
We,
I know
we,
when.
we know, but no one, even Spore doesn't know when the facility was created. It's 1994, but it's a sentient factory that creates these AI that are all hive minded. They all connect back to her, and their whole purpose is to reproduce. And they're not supposed to. They're peaceful. They were, at least the way I see it, they were originally intended as just an experiment of AI by scientists on Earth in the 90s that ended up rocketing themselves into some unknown galaxy, and then Earth disappears, and they're just kind of floating there on this asteroid. But every couple of years or so, the asteroid that they're currently on runs out of resources, and they need to find a new host world for the Mother Drive to to rebuild and keep producing, because their main their prime, what is it called? Their prime directive, yeah, their prime directive is reproduction of themselves.
That word has screwed you a couple of times, I will say.
Oh no, it has, yeah. So what happens is every couple hundred years, or when the asteroid that they're currently on runs out of resources, the Hive Mother sends out 100 to 300, depending. We haven't really agreed how many have been sent out, but a bunch of these units that are called Spore, which stands for Sovereign Probe for the Observation and Research of Eligible Host Worlds. Their job is to go onto uninhabited planets or asteroids, see if it contains the correct elements or the correct metals in order for in order for them to reproduce. Become a beacon that attracts all the other spore to that location, and then eventually transport the Mother Drive from the asteroid she's currently on to the location where that beacon has been placed. And the character I'm playing is one of those spore units. When they're sent out, they are purposely disconnected from the drive, so they become their own individual being, hence the sovereign probe part of it. So they lose their connection to the hive, and while their prime directive is to find this place that they can inhabit, their secondary directive is to learn as much as they can about the societies that have sprung up across the galaxy since the last time spore units were sent out. So a lot of spore units end up attaching themselves to certain travelers or to certain groups of people that are, especially people that are traveling, so that they can, as AIs that are pretty good at piloting, help out those travelers, but also be able to see the universe, see different planets, see their cultures, and also try and find this place where they could settle down. And what I like most, aside from having a crazy backstory, what I like most about the Spore character is because he's separated from the Hive Mother, he's such a blank slate when it comes to morality, when it comes to um, decision making. You know, all his decisions have to be in order to, you know, make the prime directive or the secondary directive happen. But you know, whether killing is wrong or right, whether you know, storming into places and stealing money in order to further your goals is wrong or right. That's stuff that he learns, or that each individual spore unit learns from the people they've attached themselves to. So he's kind of this character that I can play so many different times, and he'll always end up different because of the people that he's surrounded himself with. And I've played him twice in one campaign that only had 2 sessions, and now in a campaign that we're having a third session hopefully soon. Um, and even already within those that short amount of time, the 2 spores I've been playing, different spore characters. I've already evolved in completely unique ways.
Yeah, one wants to kill other people, and the other one just wanted to run away from everything. So clearly, we're off to a better start.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, spore now, spore 6 or 3, spore 3 now. He's with this group, and one of the people in the group's a mercenary. He's kind of attached himself to that mercenary in the group. And there was a situation where 2 characters were being held prisoner, and another AI that was holding them was shot by the mercenary characters. His spore's response was to also shoot, because he now sees that in order to help the group, sometimes you need to kill, and it's something that he understands now because of the mercenary next to him. While with the other group of people that we played with a while ago, it was spore 6 in that group. That group was more liable to run away from situations. The problem with spore, not a problem with spore, but the problem with spore in the universe itself is that AI are very much policed over, because they don't, you don't want your AI to be sentient in its own individual being. And Spore gets into a lot of problems because they'll be like, "Hey, where's your master?" And Spore's like, "I don't have a master," because no one decides to teach him that he needs that. Although this group has, the current group, so he's actually been lying a lot about things, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's between Sonya or Spore. Obviously, Dordry. We talk a lot about Dordry, and that campaign was fantastic, and I love him. But he wasn't as, I don't know. I put I didn't put as much thought into Dordry as I did Sonya and Spore. And I think the other thing too is that I feel like Sonya, in a game like Masks, everybody's like the main character. There's like 4 main characters, and also in a game like Stars Without Number, it's pretty easy to have a set main character. But I felt like Dordry was definitely not the lead.
Yeah, and I think that's something we all agreed on, though. I think just naturally.
No, that's something I was fine with that, and I think because the focus wasn't on him, it was harder for me to really do a lot of character development with him. Aside from in the first couple sessions before we agreed, hey, Dordry's really a side character.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I try most games not to make people like, oh yeah, I'm not the main character, stuff like that. But I think in that one it was fine, just because there were only 2 of you, and I knew that you as a player, you already knew how to adapt to that, so I wasn't too worried about that. Whereas if we tried to swap roles, I don't think it would have gone as well.
No, Dordry was not built to be a lead.
Well, no. But I mean, even in that regard, like if you were the main character and our other player was like the side character, I don't think it would have gone as well as it did with how we had it.
No, well, I think a lot of that is Kimby was a lot more of a personable person.
Yeah, so much that she didn't even run for mayor, and she was elected mayor.
Yeah, she was a lot more talkative. Dordry was the kind of person who, I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to go hunt at 5 in the morning. Then I'm going to go drink in the bar in the corner by myself. And then I'm going to go to bed.
Oh, but doesn't Mayor Dordry sound so nice to say?
No one liked him. And there's a reason no one liked him, because he didn't like anybody else. He just wanted to be left alone, really, after a while. And that's why he didn't really... I love him. Don't get me wrong. And that campaign was probably my favorite campaign I've ever played in. But but he doesn't hold a place in my heart the same way that like Sonya or
Yeah, I can
or
agree with
Sport do.
that. I can see why you would think that. I don't know. It's always interesting to me to hear about how other people think about their like, oh yeah, my character is this, my character is that. Because sometimes, and this isn't a bad thing all the time, but I do think there is a way you can go too far. Is when someone's like, this is everything about my character, and it's like we've played a single session, and I'm like, that's cool, but you have to be prepared. That might change depending on what happens. And some people just cannot make that change. They just can't be like, no, I'm still the same. Nothing has changed. And that kind of infuriates me to a degree because I get so pissed off when they're like, "Nah, man, that's not what it's about. It's about my character still being the same at the beginning." I'm like, but then what's the point of playing the game? Because the point of the game should still be evolving your character over time because it's a story one way or another. And we don't none of us know where it's going to go. Not even the GM. No matter how brilliant they think they are, they can't tell your character this is what you are going to become by the end of this campaign. I think probably because if a GM actually told that a player that, the player would automatically go, "No, I won't give you the satisfaction," and then they would purposely do everything in their power to not become that.
Yeah.
Because players ruin everything that I have planned. That's why I make scenarios and not plots.
That's why I love playing.
That's why I make scenarios. I never make plots
I
anymore.
always ruin
No,
your
no,
thing.
no. See, if I make a scenario, you can't ruin a scenario, but you can ruin a plot.
Oh, no. Okay, was the tournament a scenario or a plot?
That was in the past. That was before I understood. I think the tournament is what made me realize I need to do scenarios.
Got it. So basically, Dordry and Kimby were slotted to be in this tournament, held by the gods, and they were gonna fight two-on-two fights, until they eventually fought each other, and then whoever won, their god would win the tournament, and it'd be they'd get some kind of prize.
Yeah.
Before the tournament started, Justin decided to send each of our characters a care package from a mysterious benefactor. Kimby was given an egg that was going to hatch into a creature that she didn't know, and I was given a box with 5 bullets. It turns out Kimby's egg was going to hatch into this, what was it, some kind
It's
of
like
evil...
Red Devil or something like that. I can't even remember the name.
Some kind of evil thing that basically would kill
Oh
Kimby
yeah, no,
unless
that
she
was
raised
the
it well.
plan. Yeah.
And my bullets each were colored a different color. There was red, blue, green, white, and black.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, red, blue, green, white, and black. And each one of those, as I found out, during one session I shot the white one, and it created this big supernova in the middle of the room that killed everything. Another time I fired a red one, and the bullet turned into flames that became a phoenix. So as a player, I'm like, oh, all these bullets do really cool element things. And this is before we figured out what Kimby's egg was going to become. So we assumed that these bullets were sent by someone who liked us,
Friendly.
and we knew they were powerful.
Yeah. I'm so nice to you.
The tournament starts up, and we're fighting in the tournament. No big deal. Dordry won his first round. Kimby won her first round. Everything seems to be going well, and Dordry's second round starts. It had this guy who was, made of fire, who was flying around. He was like a Dragonborn type situation. He was an Ifrit. And they had someone else on the other team. And going back to the vampire story, Dordry used the blue bullet to kill the vampire. So I didn't have the blue bullet to kill this Ifrit thing. And the only 2 bullets I had left were green and black. And I thought to myself, well, green is probably wood, and this thing's a fire Ifrit.
Which it is.
Yeah, this thing's a fire Ifrit. I'm not going to shoot the green one. I really want to win this fight. I'm going to shoot the black bullet. Fire the black bullet, and instantly, Dordry and Kimby and all the other champions wake up in their beds. The entire world seems to be on fire. The sky is red, and there's stuff falling from the skies. Everything's going crazy haywire. Because it turns out Justin had planned for that bullet to be...
Not used it then.
I was supposed to use it at a different time. I just got lucky that I decided to use it then. The bullet kills everything within a 500-foot radius? Or
no.
Larger than that?
I think it was 1,000-foot radius, roughly.
In a 1,000-foot radius. So that's
which essentially
2,000...
is able to destroy a town and, surrounding wildlife, for the most part.
Well, I fired this at a tournament that was being held by the
Now,
gods.
now the flip side was it would protect all those that were protected by the gods. It did not say the gods themselves.
Themselves, yeah, because
So,
the gods
but
were
there were
protecting the
also people
champions
there at the tournament who weren't protected by the gods.
who died
So,
as well.
no, they didn't die. They survived. They got teleported back. That's why the gods
Yeah,
died. Because the gods couldn't get everyone out at time. So they're like, we'll save everyone else, and then we'll worry about whatever afterwards. They all died.
Basically, within a split second, Dordry killed almost the entire pantheon of gods. Almost.
Oh yeah, I loved it because I got to kill one of their favorite gods right in front of them.
That's when you learned your lesson, then, because I just remember saying, "Oh, Dordry's gonna load the black bullet into the gun," and your jaw dropped, and you're like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, metagame. Arthur was like, "Maybe I shouldn't," but then Dordry doesn't know what Justin's face looks like right now, so
Yeah,
Dordry
yeah.
loaded the bullet and fired it, and I rolled a crit. I rolled a crit.
Yeah, you rolled a crit. You killed all the gods that were there. So yeah, good
Yeah.
job.
And we never finished the tournament. Kimby was very upset about that.
Her
She was
goal
sure
for
she
the
was gonna
longest
win.
time was, I'm gonna win the tournament. I'm
Her
like,
goal
Dad,
for
you
the
can
longest time
change
was
it.
to win the tournament. Yeah.
You can change it. And he's just like, no, I'm not changing it. I'm
Not
not.
changing it. We're gonna have another tournament, I believe. We never ended up having one, but basically, it completely changed the entire trajectory of the campaign. That's honestly, maybe that might be my favorite story of a thing a character's ever done. Basically,
Yeah.
ruined your entire plot.
I mean, I didn't have a plot after that, to be honest. I was just like, we'll go somewhere. Because I was still
We
like,
took
oh,
a
we're going to
break,
take a little
didn't we?
break after.
Yeah.
I needed a 1 week to figure out how
What was
this was
happening
going to
next?
go.
Yeah.
Because this was a bit of a reversal. Because I'm like, now I need to actually finish up all those old gods that I had planned. Because they're going to be on the forefront now. They're in charge.
Yeah, and I mean I tend to like the things Dordry did more than the Dordry himself. Although I love playing him, but I think the other thing too is that I've played Dordry for a year and a half, and I was ready to say goodbye to him when we said goodbye.
Yeah.
We never really finished Sonya's mask campaign, so I still kind of feel like she's sitting there.
We'll get another group going.
Yeah, I won't play Sonya again if we get a different group going. I have another idea. And Spore is, I mean, we're relatively young when it comes to. I've only played him in four sessions, and 2 of those sessions
Yeah.
are from a campaign that's dead, and the other 2 are from a campaign we just started. But no, oh man, I love talking about how many times I've messed up your campaigns.
Yeah, no, you did that several times. Yeah. That was,
It's kind of like what I'm known for.
Yeah,
now
you break
amongst, like,
universes.
people.
That's.
I break universes.
Yeah, maybe one day we can show that to everyone in action. But you know.
Oh yeah, I would like to. I'd like to play a game, like live stream it or something eventually.
Yeah, but that's when we got more people and when I think we have a bit more time. Right now it might be a bit difficult.
Yeah. Once we both settle down and get a job that's a bit more steady.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, so that's
We destroyed the universe.
Well, he destroyed the
happened.
universe. I
I
tried to
did.
salvage. I tried to salvage whatever I could.
I think that's the best story I can think of right now without going into like some obscure things. And I think we're at an hour and a half almost, so I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. It was a bit more conversational. Obviously, it wasn't, I feel like clinical is the word I'll use for the other podcasts, and this one was a lot more just us 2 talking. If you like this sort of podcast, make sure you let us know. We might, switch over to a format that's more like this, or maybe do segments where we talk about the game and then, end with a story or 2 about our experiences. I think for right now, we're just going to do 2 or 3 episodes of talking about how you play the game and stuff like that. And then, one episode of every so often about just us talking about stuff like this. Yeah, as always, in the description will be a link to Discord, Facebook, Twitter. I've created those now, so they exist. Other than that, hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, thank you for listening. do be sure to comment, even if it's like nothing important. We just want to know that people have thoughts about this because we know that we're a bit different. We do talk about the games and the hobby in general from both sides as opposed to one side, which I know a lot of other podcasts do. So I'm curious to see what people think about that. Maybe we need to talk about the player side more or talk about GMing a bit more, in which case maybe we'll do like a whole episode on something like that.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, if you're enjoying it, awesome. If you're not, I don't know why you listened to 4 episodes.
Well, please listen either way because
Oh yeah,
we'd
yeah.
love to convince you to
If
love
you
us at
hate
the end
us
of
and you
this.
want to just argue with us the whole time, do it. We'll talk to you.
That's great. We're
Yeah.
fine. We're up to opinions
Yeah.
as long as it's not we hate you and I want you to die. Please don't ask us to die.
If you're listening to this on a platform that allows comments, comment your favorite story or your favorite character down below. We'll try to get back to you on what we think about that. Thumbs up usually. Um, if you can't comment, you can always send an email to swords.shield.etc@gmail.com, and we'll be able to respond to you from there. Or on Facebook, Twitter, Discord. Uh, and yeah, that's it. Enjoy. Have a good day.
Yeah. All right. Bye.